Good morning. Welcome to the information session for the High Impact Philanthropy Academy. I'm Kelly Andrews. I'm the Director of Knowledge Management and Marketing at the Center, which is part of the University of Pennsylvania School of Social Policy and Practice. What we're going to do today is I'm going to tell you, Kat is going to tell you about the programming, and then we're going to go into a Q&A with some of our alumni who are here today who have taken the program in the past and will be able to tell you about it. We have Denisha Patel, who was a member of our 2002 cohort, and she is the Executive Director of Long Arc Foundation. And then we have Steve Himmelfarb, who is the president of Himmelfarb Commercial, a real estate firm in Washington, D.C., and he is also a trustee of the Matt Haley Trust. So here I'm going to turn it over to Kat Rosqueta.
Hey, everybody. Briefly, for those of you who aren't familiar yet with the Center for High Impact Philanthropy and all its work beyond High Impact Philanthropy Academy, I wanted to tell you a bit about the center and what we do and why we do it. And then I'll give you an overview of the curriculum for High Impact Philanthropy Academy. So a bit on the center overall. The center is here, as Kelly said, at the University of Pennsylvania. It was founded now more than 16 years ago as a collaboration between alumni from the Wharton School, which is the oldest collegiate business school in the world, but has always been housed here at the School of Social Policy and Practice, which is one of the oldest schools of social work in the country, one of only two in the Ivy League, and whose mission is extremely well aligned with CHIPS, the Center for High Impact Philanthropy, in that all of our programs, our faculty, our research are focused in some way on advancing positive social change, social impact, social innovation, and social justice. So while we draw from faculty and students from across the university, the Center for High Impact Philanthropy and all of our colleagues here at the School of Social Policy and Practice are all focused on how can we make the world a better place. That's what we mean by social impact. We do two things to do that, which should be no surprise since we're based at a university. The first is that we produce new knowledge for the field. And for many of you who are professional grant makers or individual donors, probably the best piece of work or the most familiar piece of work is our annual High Impact Giving Toolkit. We are committed to, and we believe that everyone, even folks who don't choose or can't afford to be in High Impact Philanthropy Academy, can practice high impact philanthropy. And so our annual toolkit is a free resource that we make available every year to help anybody who wants to do more good with their philanthropic resources do just that. And you'll find evidence-based strategies, exemplar nonprofits that show how philanthropy is making a difference across a wide range of issues. So that's part of our mission, is to produce knowledge for the field to advance the practice of high impact philanthropy. And we're based at a university. So the other thing that we do is we are educators. And our High Impact Philanthropy Academy is our program for practitioners who are in a position to either allocate philanthropic funds or to have a significant influence through strategy or a staffing role to move where those funds go. And that is why we created High Impact Philanthropy Academy, is because there are increasingly more and more individual donors and professionals, professional grant makers in staffed foundations, people in family offices responsible for those roles that are all asking themselves, how can we create greater impact with the resources that we influence? So that's a bit on the center and high level on the academy. And I'm just going to pull up one slide so you can get an overview of the academy curriculum. There are more details on our website. But to give you just a sense of what we cover, this is an example from our 2-week-long virtual program. Because of COVID, we made High Impact Philanthropy Academy available all virtually. It's 3 hours a day over 2 weeks. And this is what we cover both in the classroom, we call that synchronous learning, where you're all together, as well as outside the classroom through things like video lectures and exercises that everybody who's a participant has access to via a special Canvas site. But if we can advance the slide, for the first week, we cover the context and the key concepts for practicing high impact philanthropy, no matter where you are, no matter what cause you're committed to, no matter what role you play, because what we found is the Academy attracts a wide diversity of practitioners. Even when you get to meet Denisha and Steve, you'll see how different their perspectives and practice could be. And it's really impossible to learn how to practice High Impact Philanthropy Academy in this group setting unless we equip everybody with some foundational knowledge. And so this is what we cover in the first week. The origins and evolution of US philanthropy. Why is philanthropy the way it is today, and what opportunities does that present for practitioners? The reason we focus on US philanthropy is not because all participants are from the US. In fact, for most cohorts, when we were in person, at least a third of folks were coming from outside the United States. But it's because the United States has the largest, most formal and structured philanthropic sector. For lots of reasons that we actually discuss in that module. Then we talk about the ecosystem for social impact. Philanthropy and philanthropic resources are just one piece of that. But if donors and grant makers want to affect the kind of broad change they want to see, understanding who the other players are and ways to partner is important. We cover the legal pitfalls and ethical responsibilities you all have as funders. That's background for everybody, even if you didn't want to practice high impact philanthropy. But then we talk about, well, what is high impact philanthropy? What does it involve? What are the principles? How is it different from other approaches? We then discuss assessment and learning part 1. There's a lot, we teach semester-long classes here. So this is just an introduction of some of the things that are relevant to funders. And then we have a diversity, equity, inclusion in philanthropy. So many of you in your workplaces and other groups you belong to may have been exposed to these concepts and learned frameworks. Ours is very specific to philanthropic activity. Now, once everybody in the cohort has been introduced to those principles, have had conversations about it, and reacted to it, and started to understand, okay, this is something that I'm going to try to bring forward in my work, that's when we start applying it. So the second week is all about putting those concepts and tools and frameworks into practice. So before we let you go, before the program ends, you will have a chance, we make sure you have a chance, with your peers to work on how all of these things can influence what you do after the program. And these are the things we cover in the second week. Grant making and other decision-making practices consistent with your desire to create greater impact. How you might align other types of money that you use or resources you control so that they reinforce your philanthropic goals. We then get into the part 2 of assessment and learning. Right. This is an iterative process for all of us. And so how do you take what you learned, bring it into your practice so you go that much farther with your next set of gifts and grants? Then we talk about philanthropic challenges and how to address them. And these are typically sourced from participants themselves. So these are real world and in a way you can think of them as live case studies that participants in the program can work on, again, with peers. And then we wrap up and we send folks on their way, although you will hear maybe from some of our alums, sort of once you are part of the CHIP family, you never really leave. So, but this is the first step. And we'll pull the slides down because Kelly and I can talk about the program and the curriculum, but probably for a lot of you, it's, well, what is it actually like to be involved in the program? So I'll let Kelly introduce our alums.
Thanks, Kat. Before we talk to our alumni, I'm going to talk a little bit about who makes a great candidate and how we select the cohort. This program is designed for individual donors and professional grant makers who want to have a more positive change with their giving. It should be for people who have influence and decision-making ability over how to allocate philanthropic resources. This includes people with roles as varied as individual donors, members of family foundations, professional grant makers, or heads of public charities. The most important factor is that they want to have make a social impact. That means they want to have a positive change with their giving, and that is the goal that motivates them. Now, how they define a positive change or the issues that they're looking at, that is up to them, but the goal has to be to have impact. Typically, people come to us when they're considering a change in their giving. It could mean as an individual donor that they've had a liquidity event. It could mean that as a professional grant maker, they are making a change into a different area of funding, or that there's a change in the funding strategy in their organization. It could mean that there's a generational transfer from someone who's a senior member of the family to someone who's a junior member of the family. But usually there's a reason that something is changing, and the candidates have realized that their way of doing things is not enough to have the impact that they want to have. So people come in here looking for confidence that the impact that they're seeking is the impact that they are truly having. Because this is such a personal sort of giving process, we really consider the cohorts the most important part of the program, because this is a community of practice, people that you're going to speak to and bounce ideas off of and rely on in years to come. So we are predominantly an interview-based process. So once you apply, we have an application on our website. You would interview with me or a member of our staff, Katherina Kat Rosqueta, or our faculty co-director, Richard Marker. And we would look to see what your philosophy of giving is, what it is you're trying to learn, and how it matches the program that we offer. We're always looking for people who have things to teach and things to learn. So there might be areas where you know very much and areas where you don't know quite as much and you want to learn more. We're looking for people who have really an open mind and are willing to share themselves and share their thoughts, and to be generous to the other people in the room so that they can listen to them and help them through their problems, because this is a process that you go through together. It's truly interactive, where you're going to be in small teams and work groups with the people in the cohort, 15 to 22 people. So you do get to know each other regardless of the format. When we're online, this is true, and it's the same as when we're in person. So we're looking for building a diverse cohort in terms of geographic area, in terms of issue area, in terms of giving vehicle, whether it's a foundation or an LLC. We aim to have a range of experiences in the room, because you're going to learn from the faculty, but you're also going to learn from each other. Now, so that you can really see how this process works, I'm going to introduce again our panelists, Steve Himmelfarb and Denisha Patel, and I'm going to ask them a few questions, which is how they came to become a philanthropist, and how they decided that they needed this course to make a bigger difference in their giving, and what the process and experience has been since that time. So first, I'm going to go to Steve.
So, I think in many ways, I used to think, I'll start with that. I used to think that philanthropy happened to me, and now I absolutely believe it happened for me. But it was an unfortunate event that was the catalyst. My business partner in 2014 died in a motorcycle accident while on a humanitarian trip in India. He was a very passionate and very hands-on philanthropist, and a very generous philanthropist. I was the executor of his estate, and part of the instructions of the estate were to create a trust, which is called the Matt Haley Trust, named for him. And I'm a business person, and in our partnership, I was the steady hand, he was the creative force, and the philanthropy that the Matt Haley Trust does today really is an extension of what Matt held very personal to him. Different recipients, different amounts. We've tweaked it. We've evolved. The trust has evolved because the world's evolved, and because I'd like to believe I became smarter along the way. One of the things that brought me to CHIP, Kelly, to sort of get at your question, was I realized I didn't have confidence in how to give, and I was becoming obsessed with what's in my own comfort zone, and specifically that meant efficiency. I knew how to underwrite recipients in a business sense, which to me meant efficiency. Like if I donate $1, this is what I'm getting for my dollar. But what I was missing was impact, and impact. So for me, so much of this was just sort of unlocking and unpacking and having confidence with this concept of impact. Accident while on a humanitarian trip in India. He was a very passionate and very hands-on philanthropist, and a very generous philanthropist. I was the executor of his estate, and part of the instructions of the estate were to create a trust, which is called the Matt Haley Trust, named for him. And I'm a business person, and in our partnership, I was the steady hand, he was the creative force, and the philanthropy that the Matt Haley Trust does today really is an extension of what Matt held very personal to him. Different recipients, different amounts. We've tweaked it. We've evolved. The trust has evolved because the world's evolved, and because I'd like to believe I became smarter along the way. One of the things that brought me to CHIP, Kelly, to sort of get at your question, was I realized I didn't have confidence in how to give, and I was becoming obsessed with what's in my own comfort zone, and specifically that meant efficiency. I knew how to underwrite recipients in a business sense, which to me meant efficiency. Like if I donate $1, this is what I'm getting for my dollar. But what I was missing was impact, and impact. So for me, so much of this was just sort of unlocking and unpacking and having confidence with this concept of impact.
Thank you. Now, Denisha has a different journey and a different way of giving. Can you tell us a little bit about, and a fun fact about Denisha, we started our listserv for the center about 8 years ago, and we added a sign-up form for it. And the other day, I was looking at our sign-up form, and Denisha was the second person who signed up for CHIP's listserv 8 years ago. And here she is today in this classroom. So I know it was a long path for you, Denisha, since that very first sign-up. So what brought you to us?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of, I guess, a lonely journey in the beginning, because I started, me and my husband created the DAF and giving to our DAF probably like 10 years ago. And so I think, I started with my standard way of research. And then that continued for another, I think, probably 5-6 years. And then I tried to become more meticulous and more organized. But at some point, I think when I got to the program, I knew it was time for me to really dig deeper and really sort of formalize our giving. And we formed a foundation, a small foundation, family foundation. And it was a place where I kind of felt like alone as I entered CHIP, in those years. Like I didn't have a group, even though I'm part of a lot of collaborative giving circles, but I didn't have a lot of people kind of doing what I was doing in my world. And so for me, aside from the amazing learning and all the transformational things I learned at CHIP, it was also an opportunity to find connections to probably a larger community. And our cohort is very special. We still meet every month, and we still receive a lot of guidance and support from CHIP, from Kelly and Kat and Richard. And that has really helped us and guided us through all our sort of hiccups, and we can ask each other, like, is this platform for grants working with you guys better for you or not good for you? And or for me, I got to, I never thought about sort of mission aligned investments before joining, the Academy. And so that's what I've been spending the last year on. I've spent it sort of exploring other opportunities to align my capital with our values as a family. And part of that has been, really, really fascinating, because it's a whole world that I never knew existed until, I attended the Academy. And so for us, it's been women's health recently. And I'm excited to see where this goes.
Thank you. So I think this is time that we would like to open it up to questions. You can use the Q&A function, and you can ask questions of any of us, whether it's Kat, who can speak about the curriculum. Our co-faculty director is Richard Marker, who who's a longtime CEO of nonprofit foundations and a major philanthropy in the past, and he has had appointments at NYU and Brown. He I believe is in the audience today. So you can ask Kat questions about the curriculum. You can ask me about the program, and then Steve and Denisha are here to answer any questions about their experience. There are some questions. We have a question already about how full the March cohort is already and when the deadline is to apply. The March cohort begins on the 6th, then it runs through the 17th. It's Monday through Friday, 11 to 2. We do have spots left in this cohort, a few spots. The early bird rate actually expires on the 31st. Anyone who's in this session today, let me know if you're interested and apply. If you apply, I can make sure that we'll give that to you for that reason. But we do have spots left in the March cohort. We're trying to build, as always, a good group to make sure that we have representation from all the different geographic areas and issue areas. But the people in there are really amazing, and you'd be happy to meet them. Some other questions that we frequently get are whether or not we record our class. That happens a lot. People want to know if they can miss a class. We don't encourage people to miss classes, of course, because it's an experiential curriculum, and everything builds on each other. So if you miss a day, you really do miss a lot. And we actually don't record because it is so interactive. And sometimes people really bring a lot of themselves to the class. So we want to make sure that people can be as candid as possible. What we do when people occasionally miss a class is that we provide the slides and a rough transcript, a very close rough transcript of what was said, so that there's notes for everyone, so that you always have those resources. For the site that we use is Penn's platform of Canvas. So the notes and the handouts and the video recordings that sometimes we have as homework, those are all available to you. But the class itself, it can't really be missed because it has to be experienced. Okay. We have another question, and I'm going to give this one to Kat. It says, what value do you think there is for advisors, funders that have been in the space for more than 10 years and follow many of CHIP's practices already?
Well, first of all, if you are one of those, thank you for following CHIP's. Nobody on our team is incentivized for academic citations. It's about, is our work actually influencing practice? We have had people in the program who have been senior grant makers for, I'm thinking of the last cohort, 30 years. It speaks, so I think I'll take that question in two parts. One question was advisors who have been in the space for more than 10 years, and the other is funders who have been in the space for more than 10 years. I think because of the way Kelly described we construct the cohorts, and because it is focused on how to practice high impact philanthropy, and literally after every cohort, we do our after action review, we update the curriculum, both as a result of feedback, but because we're in a dynamic space, and there are developments in our space, as well as great applied research from our colleagues. So we hope that what you will be getting is really the premier education on how to practice high impact philanthropy. And even a definition of high impact philanthropy, at least the way we use it, it did not exist 10 years ago. So I think if an individual is a funder, I think there's no, we don't do a screen on experience, right? Like we have had people who have really benefited from, even though they've been in this sector as a professional for 30 years, I'm thinking of our last cohort. What's nice about the diversity of it is nobody can possibly know and have experienced everything. So, you know, I won't name names, but I'm thinking of this gentleman, very experienced foundation leader, who is in the same cohort with probably a young man who was, I don't know, 30 years younger than he was, who was responsible for philanthropy and community engagement from a major tech platform that all of you would know. It was fascinating and lovely to see how much those two learned from each other. Right. I mean, that is the kind of experience when Kelly says experiential, that's what we hope everybody can take away, because we all know for adult learning, it's not really so much about the knowledge in the classroom, no matter how great the faculty person is. It's about taking it into the real world and having a community that reinforces that practice. That's right. It's January, right? What is one of the things everybody says if you want to start a new practice? Find a buddy, right? For advisors, though, that's a different issue, because some advisors really act as a de facto foundation executive. In that case, it's absolutely appropriate for them to be in the standard High Impact Philanthropy Academy. But if the advisor really isn't in a position to significantly influence where the money actually goes, then some of the curriculum I shared won't quite be right. And it can be awkward to have conversations with two roles that are so distinct. One, which is I'm really influencing where this money goes, I have a say, versus no, I'm supporting the principles. Because we recognize that, and because we're getting more questions about advisors, Kelly and her team we're actually thinking of introducing an advisor track. It's not up yet because we want it to be as good and thoughtful as what we hope high impact, the standard High Impact Philanthropy Academy is. But if that's something, if you're really more of an advisor to somebody making those decisions, and you don't really have what you consider significant influence on where the money goes, but you want to be helpful and you want to understand impact more, please let us know, because we are in the process of thinking what an advisor track might look like.
Very good. Another question that we get a lot, and I've heard this from people that I've interviewed, is how is this different from other programs? For example, there's people in who have a chartered advisor in philanthropy certification, or they've taken courses or been to conferences that are given by different organizations. How is High Impact Philanthropy Academy different, Kat?
Right, I'll start, and then I'm curious if Denisha and Steve have any experience with other programs. Well, first of all, it is focused on high impact philanthropy. I don't know of any other program that is focused on teaching the practice of high impact philanthropy. So I guess that's one, probably the biggest distinction is the focus and the content. It is an educational program. So we really design a curriculum, unlike, you might go to a conference that has a theme and then you have lots of, different speakers and sessions. As Kelly said, this is a curriculum that's been built on, so it's cumulative over the course of 2 weeks. I mean, we take the same care with this curriculum as I do when I have to develop a new graduate course for the nonprofit leadership program, a semester-long course, similar to some of the leadership programs at Wharton. So I just want to reinforce, this is not a workshop, it's not a conference, it's an education program that we hope is designed well and thoughtfully enough that it prepares practitioners to change their practice, right? And, you know, one mark for us of a good education program is you ought to be at least thinking, if not acting differently after the course as before, right? This is not a passive, you know, watching a bunch of YouTube videos, not that a conference would be like that, but I think that is the two main distinctions. It is focused on the practice of high impact philanthropy. There are many other important elements of philanthropy, like how do you structure what kind of financial or legal structures would you choose? How do you maximize the tax benefit of your philanthropic activity? We touch on those a little, but that's not about optimizing for impact, right? So the content is different, and then it is not a workshop or even a series of workshops, and it's not a conference type setting. It really is an educational program. But like I said, Denisha and Steve, you may have gone to all sorts of other things that you found helpful, so it might be useful for you to do a compare and contrast too.
I'm happy to start. I think the first thing was just that how you know, when you attend like different lectures and programming, it's just not as engaging. So I think it goes back to what Kelly was saying, the experiential learning. And regardless of where you are in your philanthropic journey, I think we all saw from at least our cohort how everyone seemed to really like move their schedules around in case they even knew they were going to miss, and then tried not to miss because it was so engaging, and we were all getting so much from it, regardless of where we all were in our path, whether we were in the beginning, sort of middle, or we thought we all knew what we're doing and realized that we could go back and reevaluate to be more effective. So I think, you know, you guys said it best, where it's just about, this is the most engaging program I've ever attended. Such that we're all still connected, and we're meeting monthly to continue that engagement with each other. So I think that speaks to the power of an authenticity of our engagement with each other.
And first of all, thank you for those kind words, but I just wanted to note that Denisha was in a virtual program, not even in person. So some people are like, so I guess I'm especially appreciative of that, because I visually have seen some of those connections happen when we're all in the same place. But the fact that you guys have stayed as connected as you have, even though, have any of you actually met in person?
Yes, so a lot of them have, and then I think we're talking
nice.
about meeting at the Impact Philly Forum
Oh.
this year. But yeah, I think I want to say a couple of the folks actually see each other very frequently now, and now they're running into each other in conferences that they discovered like through your program, and just like we had a recent meeting on just collective giving groups, and you know, when everyone is sharing sort of groups that they were part of, and that has also led to more, you know, connections with each other, where we're like, oh, I'll connect with you offline to hear more about that group. So it continues, and it's actually like, I think we even have more folks attending. And trying to really work hard to make those meetings, because they're meaningful to, so.
That's fantastic. Steve, how about you? Are there any other programs that are similar enough that you could kind of compare and contrast?
So to me, it's sort of a contrast point. It is, I think, because assembling the cohort was so thoughtful in not just diversity, but size too, that our conversations were really rich, incredibly honest, sometimes vulnerable too. And so that makes a lot of sense as to why you don't record that. To me, when you touched on that, that made all the sense in the world. But that diversity and openness allowed us to really look at all of the different facets that were discussed, all of the different issues in a real 360 way. And I felt like we were always turning stuff over and looking at it from different perspectives, talking about what works and what doesn't work. And what works for different organizations and different end goals too. There was very frequently no one answer, which I think sort of spoke to the diversity that was in the room. Mine was live and in person. The other conferences that I've been to have been more focused and have had less, sort of the combination of more focused and maybe a byproduct of more focused with a very discrete sort of agenda. The byproduct of that was less diversity in who was attending, and for sure, less vulnerability and less openness, right? Because we were thrown together and we're in a room for a few hours, and it's just a totally different vibe. I felt like we really sort of got at it, and we didn't stop, and the conversations continued outside of the class. I mean, which was awesome.
Now you're both making me think that we are overdue for a CHIP reunion of all cohorts.
Yeah, and actually Denisha's her cohort, they have their meetings, and recently Kat is the vice chair of Candid, or she's the chair. I'm sorry, she was the vice chair. Now she's the chair of Candid, which is the merger of Foundation Center and GuideStar. And she brought someone from that organization to present to Denisha's group, and they invited everyone from all different cohorts. So that was something really initiated by them, but then helpful to bring everyone together. And that is something we're trying to do, is to create that community of practice. And it does require that people come from different directions. In our last cohort, we had a problem solving session at the end where one of the members presented on his problem, and he was in a group. He was in a quasi-public organization where most of their funding was from the U.S. government, and he did grant making in workforce development. And there was someone who was there who was from an LLC that was funded out on the West Coast. There was someone who was with a private foundation in a large Midwestern city. There was someone who was from a community foundation, I believe, and they all asked completely different questions, things that he never would have thought of, because he had this one perspective that he had been coming from, and he was able to have different views on his problem that he otherwise wouldn't have had, and he took that back to his his grant making practice. Another thing that people ask us about is, whether more than one person should attend, and that is something we really do encourage when it's possible to have two people from a family, or someone who's a professional grant maker and a principal, or two people who are from who are colleagues and professional grant makers, because otherwise sometimes when you learn about impact, you end up out there alone trying to evangelize to the rest of your to your family, to the rest of your the staff. But if you have another person there, then you're both rowing in the same direction, and it really validates points of view. We had sometimes we'll have an older family member and a younger family member, and that can be a really rich experience because they see each other in a way that they hadn't before, and it can be challenging to have those family dynamics and giving. And it's hard sometimes for a younger family member to present themselves as a professional to their parents, and that can be something that happens within the classroom.
Yeah, I'm thinking of one example, Kelly, of where we had, especially early on in COVID, we had multiple pairs, multiple parent-child, and I feel like sometimes what will happen is that the child will be saying something to the parent over and over again, but when the parent hears the same exact thing from another child, it clicks. So I mean, it speaks both to the diversity, but also the having pairs from the same family group or institution. Sometimes it's the participation kind of like gets rid of like a roadblock that's been there for a while. And sometimes it's literally just because they are hearing it, that their situation is not unique. Like they're hearing it from other people experiencing the same things, and then collectively they can figure out, okay, what are the different paths?
I don't see any more questions. So do you want to have a final word, a final piece of advice maybe on giving? I can have Denisha, or do you have a final word?
I mean, I'm surprised by how often I go back to Canvas to sort of like look up an issue area, because you guys have transcribed all of our conversations. And it's actually like really beneficial, because I find myself actually going back and thinking, oh yeah, that was what the point was. And like, how does that, fit into what I'm doing today, and kind of being more gentler on myself. Because I think the main takeaway for me was, this is like not a perfect science, and there's no right and wrong. And I think being in a community that kind of reinforced that was really just kind of helpful in me being hard on myself. And so having people be, vulnerable, as Steve said, having us share that, like, oh my gosh, is this the right decision? That was always really helpful. Then I go back to the Canvas site and I go to the class and I can see like what all my, cohort friends are saying. And I'm like, okay, like we're all here again together. And so it's actually really great that I'm a fan of that Canvas site and all your great transcriptions, Kelly, because sometimes it's like even the silly things we're all saying are in there. And it keeps it really fun and light. So thank you for doing that, guys.
Yeah, I usually do the transcriptions, and I put the jokes in too, so we're there for later. Steve, do you have a last word for the people who are listening?
So if you're considering it, for me, and I think this was true of my entire cohort, every day there were a lot of aha moments, like stuff just clicked. A lot of what you're wrestling with, even if you didn't bring that into the session, somebody else did, and through exploring that, things would click. So I left, and as a matter of fact, I have a notebook that is always on my desk. That is my notebook from that week that I'll go back and I'll reference, because I'll remember that I wrote something down about that. It was a moment, and the aha moment at the time wasn't my aha moment, it was somebody else's, but this issue came up later and I'll go back and reference it. And what Denisha said totally resonates with me, that you realize this is not a perfect science, and you've got to be forgiving of yourself. But because of the program, for me specifically, and I think this is true of the people I went through the program with, it is now a very informed journey, and that's different than before. So yes, the journey is foggy. Yes, the journey's got pitfalls. Yes, we're going to make mistakes, but we're informed now, and we have resources now. And sort of this CHIP family and these CHIP resources, which I still do tap into, it is both my North Star in some at certain times, but also my safety net, right? That there's somebody has already dealt with this, has already wrestled with it, and has already thoughtfully unpacked whatever it is that's in front of me. So that's my little bit of wisdom.
So like, I feel like CHIP's High Impact Philanthropy Academy now has like a new phrase to describe. It's not a perfect science, but a more informed journey. Like, I just take it from alums what the program's about. And I that to me, that is what we're always hoping for. Like, we know, if philanthropy were so easy and perfect, you guys wouldn't be here, right? It's and so it's not. And so you're going to make mistakes and you're not going to be sure. But as Steve just said, but if you can proceed more informed with a community that's helping you, you and all of us will go so much farther.
Wonderful. So we can end this 10 minutes, give you 10 minutes back of your day. I want to thank our panelists, Denisha and Steve, for coming. It's been great. I actually have never met Steve before, so this was a really wonderful thing to do. Kat, of course, knows him, but this
at the reunion, Kelly.
Yes, but he was new for me. And so I feel enriched from this experience. So if you're interested, please look at our website. You can apply, or you can just contact me and we can set up time to speak. I'm excited to talk about the program at any time, of course. So thanks. Have a good afternoon and a good Friday, good weekend.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.